Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of this type of video where we're going to go once again on YouTube. We're going to take a look at some of your questions, some of your comments that you guys have left us throughout the week, and we're going to respond to them. We've been doing these videos now for about 4 weeks, and the response that we have gotten back, the feedback we've gotten from you, our viewers, has been very positive. So we're going to do this, for a while. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and log on here. I want to get on to YouTube. I'm going to take a look at some of your comments. We're just going to select some random comments, and we're going to answer them right here on this video. The first comment I want to answer is from Mr. Blaze GR. He writes this question on our video, 5 Mistakes Ball Python Owners Make. His question, Mr. Blaze writes, is, I want to get a ball python so bad, but I feel like it's very confusing to keep humidity certain place and temperature. Is caring for a ball python relatively easy? Well, I do think ball pythons are relatively easy pets. Now, those of you guys who know me and you've watched our videos, you know I personally am not a big fan of ball pythons. We call them pet rocks because they're basically just that. They're not a highly active. Now, one of my favorite species of pythons is obviously the Burmese python, but I'm not a big fan of ball pythons. However, I do believe that ball pythons make good pets. I believe they're relatively easy to take care of. Now, you were talking about temperature and humidity. It certainly, your ball python is going to need a place to bask. He's going to need a place to warm up, to thermoregulate his body. And your bearded dragon is going to need a proper humidity level. Now, that being said, a lot of new keepers worry about, for instance, if you read in a care guide that a ball python should be kept in the daytime temperature of 86 degrees or 85 degrees or whatever care sheet you're reading, whatever it may say, people think that they have to keep that ball python exactly on that temperature or else it's going to get sick. And we got to remember that these animals did not originate in terrariums in captivity. These animals originated in the wild, where there is no such thing as ideal conditions. So these animals are adapted to surviving in a host of different temperatures. Now, there are temperature ranges for all reptiles that are dangerous. Believe it or not, that is usually at the higher end of the spectrum. I tell people all the time, you can kill a reptile faster by keeping it too hot than you can by keeping it too cool. So if you ever want to err on the cooler side. That being said, in the wild, ball pythons, as well as all other wild animals, or even domesticated animals that are kept outside, are going to be subjected to temperatures that are going to be above the ideal and below the ideal, and they're adapted to taking care of that. So while I do recommend shooting for an ideal maintenance temperature with all reptiles, it's nothing to stress over if your temperatures fluctuate a little bit. Same thing with humidity. Especially with bearded dragons. We have people that call us all the time, my humidity went up to 50%. Oh my God, is it bad? Is it bad? And we're like, no, look, ideal humidity for a bearded dragon is going to be 30, 40%. We've had humidity get up as high as 65, 70% in our facility. It's not, we don't keep it there full time, but it's not cause for panic if it happens from time to time. The same thing about egg incubation. We breed a lot of reptiles here, and I do not have an incubator. We incubate everything from colubrid eggs like bull snakes, milk snakes, king snakes, bearded dragons, ball pythons, Burmese pythons, monitor lizards, all the animals that we breed and we work with, we incubate all their eggs without an incubator. We don't have any of that, and the reason for that is simply it's unnecessary. Now, if you read many of the care guides online, they'll tell you, if you're going to incubate for example, ball python or Burmese python eggs, they've got to be kept at, 88 degrees and 100% relative humidity. It's nonsense. Animals in the wild lay eggs. Those eggs are subjected to daytime highs and nighttime lows. When it rains, it becomes more humid. When it doesn't rain, it becomes less humid. And those eggs are capable, just like these animals, of surviving both extremes. So if the fear of you not being able to maintain a perfect temperature and a perfect humidity is what's keeping you from getting a ball python, I'm just going to advise you to, shoot for the best you can. Don't sweat the small stuff. Like I said, these animals are capable of surviving a lot more than we give them credit for. That being said, I'm going to tell you guys, for the past couple videos, we've been talking about old school. I'll tell you some just one quick old school story. Everybody panics now about shipping reptiles. You got to ship them next day air, and they got to be held at a FedEx hub. And they got to be in a styrofoam box, and it's got to be wrapped in cardboard, and all these things that people really stress and panic. Now, we do use those things here at our facility because that's kind of the norm of the industry. However, many years ago, in the reptile business, we used to ship snakes regular, just ground shipments. I would have guys, like in Texas or California, that would ship me California king snakes or bull snakes or desert king snakes, things like that. They would put them in a box, take them to FedEx, and ship them ground. And I have never received a snake that was dead. In fact, me and a buddy of mine that used to live down in southern Florida used to ship snakes to each other on Greyhound buses. We would take them to the bus depot. We would stick them on the bus. We didn't even get on the bus with them. We just buy a ticket for the animals to go on the bus, and I'd call my buddy and say, hey, I put it on a Greyhound bus. It should be to you sometime in the next 10 to 12 hours. Never lost an animal. So these animals are capable of surviving things that, today we worry too much about it. I think we worry way too much. These animals have been surviving long before you and I were born on this earth, and they have been designed and created to do just that survive. So if your humidity, your temperature goes off by a degree or two, or 3 or even 4 or 5, don't sweat the small stuff. These guys are hardier than you think. Next question comes from Angela Jones. Angela Jones sent this question on one of our videos. Actually, the video was answering your YouTube comments. And anyway, Angela's question is, I'm going to go ahead and silence my phone. You guys give me a second here. Because anyway, she says, do you feed dubia roaches to your bearded dragons? My dragon developed gout in both her front legs, and the vet said it came from feeding her dubias due to the uric acid they retain from the protein in their food. Okay, Angela, I'm going to tell you this. There's a little bit of truth to this, but not entirely. Okay. Do we use bearded dragon, or do we feed dubia roaches to bearded dragon? Absolutely. Do we believe that dubia roaches are good for bearded dragons? Absolutely. Of all the insects that you could feed to bearded dragons, I think dubia roaches rank right up there at the very top. That being said, the problem is not with the dubia roaches. The problem is with what is fed to the dubia roaches. Now, one of the things that your vet here mentioned to you, he said, you said, let me go back to your comment here, that dubia roaches, due to the uric acid they retain from the protein in their food. Now, that is true. There is a problem when you are feeding too much protein to your dubia roaches. What I mean by that is, I've even heard people say this. They say, well, get your dubia roaches to start your breeding colony. It doesn't matter what you feed them. You can feed them old food scraps. You can feed them dog food. I've heard of many of people say that. I've even heard some breeders say that to people, giving them advice on how to start an insect colony to feed their insect-eating lizards. However, that's not true. You can't feed your dubia roaches just anything. You don't want to trash feed your animals. The other thing is some of the dog foods out there are way too high in protein. You need to feed your dubia roaches, gut load your dubia roaches with a diet that is lower in protein and not so high. Now, once again, I'm going to do a shameless plug. We sell a product on our website called Insect Buffet. It has a good bit of protein in it, but not so high that it's going to cause this problem. So, be careful what you feed your dubia roaches. And I'm going to just toss this number out here. About 19% or less when it comes to protein. I think you'll be okay. In other words, whatever you're feeding them, make sure that the protein percentage is less than 19%. Our insect buffet does meet that requirement. You can feed it to your dubia roaches. You can feed your dubia roaches to your bearded dragons. We have used dubia roaches for quite a while, and we do feed them. Now, we do feed them the insect buffet. But that being said, also give your roaches some good food. Things that I like to feed them is leafy greens like collard greens, mustard greens. They seem to really relish those things. Make sure that what you're giving your roaches is fresh. In other words, don't go out to the garden and pick the nastiest looking wilted plants. Bring them in and feed that to your roaches. Because once again, remember, everything that you feed your roaches is going to ultimately feed your reptile. So make sure you're giving them fresh produce. Good leafy greens, things like that. And once again, protein levels, keep them down below about 19%, and you'll be okay. Dubia roaches, once again, they're just not the problem, no matter what some people are saying about them. The problem, once again, is feeding too high protein diet to your dubia roaches. Next question, and this is actually this is a series of questions or questions and comments and things like that. I'm going to read this whole thing because I think that we'll all benefit from this. But this next comment comes from, I believe this is pronounced Azalea T. And once again, if I'm mispronouncing your name, my apologies to you. But she writes, I have 2 female dragons. I had to house... Okay, let me back up and say, this was on our Dragon Cage Tour video. In that video, I made a comment and I said, there's a lot of people out there that are adamant that you cannot house 2 bearded dragons in the same cage. Once again, that's nonsense. You can house 2 bearded dragons. I have actually seen someone raise 2 males in the same cage, and 2 males were raised and they got along fine. Now, I don't recommend that. Males are territorial. Usually, males will fight one another. But there is no problem with housing 2 female dragons together. We have done it for years. Many other people I know that have kept dragons have been successful at doing it. But anytime you make a statement, anytime you say you can do something, someone comes along usually and says, well, that's not true, you can't do that. No matter how much proof or no matter how long you've been doing it, somebody out there always... Anyway, I'm not saying that's what Azalea's trying to do here, but she did have a concern. She wrote this, and this was the video that she questioned, the Dragon Cage Tour, and she is responding to my comment that you can actually keep 2 bearded dragons in the same cage. She says here, I have 2 females, had to house them together for a few days. The UVB blew, and I couldn't get another for another 2 days. Now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and say this. 2 days without UVB light's not going to cause the dragon any harm. We have cloudy days where the UVB is not as strong in the wild. Once again, a couple days without UVB is not going to hurt anything, but I understand what she was thinking. I have a light out, so I'll put it in the other cage where it will have a UVB light. I totally get her way of thinking here and what she was trying to accomplish. She said, anyway, one went and attacked the other on day number 2, which was the day I could finally replace the brown UVB, the blown UVB. Kind of seems like it depends on the dragon. Now, She was telling me that I think there was another post where she made a statement where this dragon ran over and bit the other dragon on the back of the neck or something like that. And I said, that sounds to me not like two aggressive dragons attacking one another. That sounds to me like maybe your two female dragons may not actually be two females. There may be a male and a female. When a dragon runs over, bites another dragon on the back of the neck, usually that is a mating display. That is the male dragon biting the female on the back of the neck. I know it's not romantic, or I don't know, maybe some of y'all. But guys, don't go around biting your girls on the back of the neck. But in bearded dragon language, that's completely acceptable. It's what they do. In fact, many reptiles do that. Snakes do that. King snakes, bull snakes. The males will bite the females on the back of the neck. I don't know in reptile language if that ain't, hey baby, I'm in the mood. Maybe so, but anyway, they do that. So I'm wondering if you didn't have both a male and a female and was just mistaking about the sex of the dragon. So I commented back to her and I said, to be honest, that sounds like a breeding behavior. Females, in my experience, are not very territorial. You sure it was not a pair? She wrote me back, said, Cold Blood Creations, I've checked them both numerous times to be sure. I see female parts for both, no male parts. I've wondered about it myself numerous times. Exotic vet also, well, she said exotic. I know this is a vet because once again we had a separate conversation, but she said exotic also confirms female for both. Now, someone else responded back to her, a gentleman by the name of Lewis, and Lewis said, I have a female that everyone swore was a male, even by a vet. 5 years later, she laid eggs. Pretty hard to tell, even with the lights out and the flashlight through the belly. Now, I'm going to say something here that's not going to be very popular if you're a veterinarian. Veterinarians seldom know jack about reptiles, and that is the God's honest truth. So, listen, if a vet tells you it's a female, I would take it with a grain of salt. And I say that because they're mistaken, sometimes more so than they get it right. I'm going to tell you a couple stories about reptiles and veterinarians. These are stories that I have personally experienced. Lewis here said that he had a female that everyone swore, or had a male that everybody, no, I'm sorry. He said, I have a female that everyone swore was a male until it laid eggs. And, said even a vet confirmed. So anyway, I'll tell you this story. So a couple years ago, a guy came up to me in a Repticon show down in Atlanta, Georgia, or up in Atlanta, Georgia, had a sulcata tortoise. Also known as the African spur thigh. He said to me, he goes, this animal is a female. I was wanting a male. He wanted a tortoise that was going to get really large, so he wanted a male. He said, this is a female, and I'm going to give it to you because I'm looking for a male. Well, I got this tortoise from the guy, and I looked at it, and I said, this is a male. And he said, no, it's not a male. And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a male. And he said, no. He said, I've taken it to a veterinarian. And I said, a veterinarian? He said, yeah, a veterinarian. I said, okay. I said, well, let me show you something. So I took the tortoise and I showed him several things that you can look at that kind of confirmed to me that this was most definitely a male tortoise. And his response to me, he said, well, my reptile veterinarian that specializes in reptiles did an x-ray and found that this tortoise had a uterus. Some of y'all are probably laughing right about now. He did an x-ray through a tortoise shell. Now, I don't know. You know what? I'm not an x-ray technician. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought x-rays were designed to see bone, not to see through bone. But apparently this reptile veterinarian's got something going on down there. He could x-ray through this bony structure called the tortoise's shell, could see inside of that, and found a uterus, thereby confirming this was a female in that veterinarian's professional opinion. However, in my very humble non-medically licensed opinion, I told my buddy, I said, I don't care what your vet said, this is a male. He insisted that he wanted me to have it, so I said, all right, I brought it home. About 6 months later, I sent him a video of his sulcata tortoise breeding one of my female sulcata tortoises. Once again, veterinarians seldom get it right. And I say seldom because veterinarians typically, they see dogs, they see cats, they see maybe horses, things like that. Most veterinarians don't have a great deal of experience with reptiles. But I will tell you this, they won't let that stop them from seeing reptiles. They'll see them whether they know anything about them or not. As a matter of fact, this is an absolutely true story. I have a friend that called me. She works at a vet clinic, and she said, your videos were on the computer in our vet's office. And what had happened, someone brought a bearded dragon into their office, and the veterinarian went and looked it up, was watching some of our videos, to try to figure out what to tell this person about those bearded dragons. And so I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, they don't always know a lot about exotics, and being able to there's several things that you can tell the sexes between a male and a female. One of those is just experience, looking at them over a long period of time, examining many dragons. But one of the key things that we look for too is behavior. There are distinctive behaviors between males and females, so we look at those. But, maybe what you're describing here may have been a male. When they breed, when bearded dragons breed, it's not flowers and candy. Ladies, it can be a little bit on the brutal side. If you've never seen it, it really does look like the male bearded dragon is attacking the female. That's not the case. And so anyway, I hope you got those dragons separated, though, if that were the case, because if he were successful, you're probably going to have a clutch of fertile eggs to decide what to do with. But anyway, Zay, thank you for sending your comment. I hope I have given you a little bit of insight on this, maybe. But anyway, let's move to our next question. This is from Doug Lynch. Doug Lynch asked this question on our Answering Your YouTube Questions and Comments number 4. This is the one that my daughter and I, Anna, was answering your questions together. But Doug writes, just curious on updates to Georgia's proposed changes to reptile laws. Any support from USARK? Okay, Doug, thank you for asking this question. I appreciate it. He said, just curious on updates to Georgia's proposed changes. It's no longer a proposed change, Doug. It passed. Because usually when a government proposes these laws, they've already made up their mind what they're going to do. They'll say all this stuff like, well, you could call in and voice your opinion, or you can send an email, or you can show up to 90% of the time, they've already made up their mind. They already know what they're going to do. And all the rest of that is just pomp and circumstances to make us as citizens feel better about what they're going to do. I believe that was the case with Georgia changing the laws. I called Georgia's DNR many times. And, because USARK issued their little, their statement, hey, this is going on. This law is being considered. Dial this number, and it was a number to the Georgia DNR up in Atlanta. I never got an answer. No one ever answered the phone, and it's the same thing. It goes on down in Florida. It's going up in South Carolina, in Alabama, here in Georgia, and it's just basically they say we're going to change the law. We're going to hear from you guys, and you go and you show up and you talk. And they go, okay, well, thank you for, and then they go ahead and vote to do what they were going to do all along. And I don't even think most of the time these agencies even listen to what people are saying. And that's unfortunate, and it brings to question the whole government for the people. Are they really for us, or are they just tyrannically controlling us? no matter which side of the opinion you are on that. Now, I happen to believe that government is necessary, although I happen to also believe that government can overstep its bounds many times. But nevertheless, as a business, we do try our best, everything that we know, to obey the law. We used to breed Burmese pythons here in Georgia. We will not breed them anymore. The reason for that is because now the Burmese pythons has to be licensed in Georgia. They have to be chipped, and you can't breed them. This is a very large animal. It's an expensive animal to feed. It is also a potentially dangerous animal, and we do recognize that fact. These large constrictors are potentially dangerous. We have several safety precautions here at our facility. We have rules. If the animal is over 6 foot long, 2 people have to be in the room. We keep things on our shelf that will help us, like Listerine mouthwash. That'll usually help if a big python bites you. The Listerine will cause them to let go. Things like that. But they are a potentially dangerous animal, and many states have come in and said, we don't want them to become native. We think they're potentially dangerous. But so for this reason, states are starting to outlaw them, and my state here in Georgia did the same. However, if as a breeder, let's say I keep a pair of Burmese pythons, I can have them chipped. There's a couple reasons I don't want to do that. Number one is because if I can't breed and sell this animal, then I'm putting a lot of money into something that I'm not making a return on. And as a business, that's not a wise business decision for us to do. The other side of that is people have said to me, well, just breed them and sell them out of the state illegally and no one will know. You're never going to do anything in your life that no one knows. Someone's going to know. So, you know what? There's a lot of other reptiles that I can work with. I don't want to spend my hard-earned money on attorney fees representing me in a court of law when I'm arrested for breeding an animal or selling an animal illegally. I think that's a very stupid business decision. And so anyway, we're no longer going to be breeding Burmese pythons here in Georgia because of that. Now, the next part of your question, you said any support from the USARK. Now, once again, I know this is unpopular to say publicly, like on a forum like Facebook or YouTube, but USARK is as worthless as my nipples. And no, we have not gotten any support. In fact, when it came time, USARK didn't even show up at the meeting where the Georgia law was decided on. In fact, our Georgia Herp Society president showed up to represent us, but USARK, or our USARK, should be USARK, were pretty much worthless. Now, again, I know that's an unpopular opinion. People tell me all the time, you can't speak against USARK. Oh, you're going to get blackballed and people are going to turn against. You know what? If people turn against me because I have an opinion, then turn. It's sooner or later, you're only as good as your record. And USARK's record is that they suck. They are worthless. They've done nothing for the people down in Florida to speak of. They've done nothing. And everybody's asking the same question now. In fact, I was down at a pet store down in Florida. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but I was talking to the owner of that pet store, very well known in the reptile community. His statement to me was this. He said, sooner or later, you're only as good as your record. He said, and in Florida, USARK has done nothing but fail and fail and fail and fail. And, he said the same thing. He said, at one time, I was a big supporter of them. However, they're either they need to hire better lawyers or they just need to fold up and get out of it because fighting for your rights, it's a good slogan. It's a good buzzword or whatever you want to call it. But in reality, it's losing for your rights. There's just so very little that USARK has done for the reptile community. I would almost be ashamed if I was the president of USARK to even say I'm fighting for your rights. I would say, we're just taking your money. And that's what it seems like. I talked to another dealer from South Carolina the other day, and this guy told me, he said, over the years I've donated thousands upon thousands of dollars to USARK, and basically when I needed them, I got nothing in return. So people are starting to see USARK for what they are, and I think that's good. A lot of times people wait until somebody else says it, and then they go, yeah, I agree with it, because nobody wants to be that go against the grain guy that just says something that's unpopular. But no, USARK has not supported us here in Georgia, and that's not surprising because South Carolina herpers feel like they've not supported them, just like herpers in Florida and Alabama. So anyway, to answer your question, no, nothing from USARK, but they don't have to worry because USARK doesn't get anything from us here either. Hey guys, I don't want to end this on a bad note. I don't want to end this talking about USARK. So I am going to just share a little bit of news with you. We are getting away from the Burmese pythons, and like I told you, in fact, by the time this video is released, there will be no Burmese pythons at our facility. But we are getting a new species of snake. I am so excited to be working with the Australian Woma python. They're much smaller than the Burmese pythons, less dangerous. They make incredibly good pets, and I am very excited to be working with those guys. So, you know, if everything goes through, we'll be doing a video featuring the Woma python pretty soon. Very much looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to go ahead and close out of YouTube here. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you for sending your questions, your comments. I know this one was a little longer than normal. If you've watched it all the way to this point, thank you very much. You guys have a great weekend or week.